You guys still have eyes? Hello and hey, today we're messing around with Path of Exile, this time going over a potentially strong starter in the soon-to-be buffed Skeleton Mage Necromancer. Sorry for the flashbang at the beginning of the video, just wanted to let you guys know what you were in for when choosing and playing this skill. So, might need to invest in some nice shades if you're going to enjoy the playstyle. Jumping right into the meat of things, this build already clears T16s without any gear right now, pre-buff, and without any gear, merely meaning that we have to have the Dead Reckoning Jewel, which gives us the Skeleton Mages, and access to a 6-link to clear the highest level of content currently. With 50% more damage, 5-link would look kind of similar to the videos that you saw. It's not the fastest, obviously, so kind of be what it may. It's going to be a strong skill, so just, like I said, to see that 50% more damage buff and 100% increased projectile speed buff, which is, do not overlook that, it's actually crazy. The downside to this, the Jewel is going to be a chase item early in the league. Not a huge percentage of players is likely to have played this before, and with the perceived gutting of Necromancer, except for this one kind of propped up minion, more people are likely to join the bandwagon on the massively buff skill, so especially one that assaults your eyes for several screens, which will double the distance that the projectiles will fly, so it's crazy. But yeah, whatever the cost of Tabula plus Dead Reckoning ends up being is going to be the budget of this build, because you don't need anything else. The tree itself is a very standard minion damage player life tree. They've looked the same for several leagues in a row now. The cluster jewel you see here is not required, but does help quality of life tremendously, and you'll definitely want it by the end game. The only node that we truly care about, in my opinion, is Blessed Rebirth, which is 4 seconds of invincibility for minions we create. It's worded slightly differently. Minions we created recently or something like that take no damage, but 4 seconds of invincibility. And since skeletons have comparably low life, guaranteeing 4 seconds of their big damage is all we can really ask for. Plus, when you're mapping, you'll have moved on to the next pack by the time 4 seconds is up, so it's just super smooth to play with. There are plenty of small iterations that you can make, particularly with cluster jewels, but I don't like to show too many of those systems in my guides because they start to require more and more specific gear, and I just want to get you started at a base level doing good damage, not quite that excellent investment damage, which you will find with time, and of course, currency. Some of the other things we can talk about are, at some point we could path over to Whispers of Doom to get a second curse going, but is literally in no way required, and considering the Anoint is 3 golden oils, that's too expensive for the scope of this video, like I was saying with the specific cluster jewels, things of that nature. A quick note about EE, or Elemental Equilibrium, if you're unfamiliar. I am proccing it here with added cold damage on attacks on a ring here. If you aren't using a cold skill to proc that, or don't have very specifically just added cold damage to your attack, don't nerf yourself, don't take it, but again, you probably want to look into how that works if you are unfamiliar. Anyway, the simple tree here, there's a link to the PoB down in the description. Moving over to skills, we want Vol Summon Skeletons as soon as we can swing it. You see I have about 1 million skill gems linked to it and not enabled. The most important ones here are, of course, Vol Summon Skeletons, Minion Damage, Spell Echo, Pierce, Elemental Army or Elemental Focus, kind of pick one, and GMP or LMP for clear, and Predator or Hypothermia for single target. I'm aware that I just said a bunch of conditionals there, that's why there are so many gems listed, but you'll figure out what feels right for you. Mapping without Pierce or without a multiple projectile gem will feel pretty bad, pretty slow, but bossing with that same setup will kind of bring your damage way down. The first clips of the video that you saw were with LMP, so maybe the 50% more damage buff will be enough that we don't want a gem swap. We're feeling pretty lazy, except for like the hardest encounters, but I've found that LMP kind of is that middle ground between giving up damage and not having to do a gem swap without clearing the entire screen at once. So, like I said, play with it, you'll find it. I also prefer to automate my curse and offering, which kind of looks like this. The Cyclone, Cast While Channeling, Sniper's Mark, and Flesh Offering. The clear is good enough that we don't have to curse everything you're hitting already. Thus, the mark is what I'm using and not Elemental Weakness, though that would definitely be the curse if we were to add a curse later. And Flesh Offering is for obviously DPS and smooth mapping. That attack speed and movement speed is great for shield charge, but Bone Offering is also awesome. You're going to get 700 life back when you block, and so it'll be great for the toughest encounters, as it'll keep your other minions alive as well. Just that much better. The auras are very straightforward, of course. Zealotry and Summon Skeletons, they both offer more damage multipliers. Zealotry explicitly, and Skitter through Shock, with Skitter also coming with the not to be overlooked Chill as well. It opens up a green skill gem to swap in Hypothermia and from the multiple projectile gem, and just keeps us from getting hit that much more, because Hypothermia is more damage against targets that are chilled. That's what I'm talking about there, kind of just bringing it back on itself. But to move to utility skills and movement, we'll go ahead and jump up, kind of group these together. Desecrate is so we can obviously get our zombies back, raise our specters in the zones, and prep any offering we want to just to give it going. We don't really use it that often, but it would be really annoying to try to juggle that into your inventory and out of it, so it's up to you if you want to keep the slot occupied by the green gem. Shield Charge again is for speed and to grant us Fortify, which I super value highly, like especially in these builds that I want to get up close and personal, and since I'm literally tagging mobs with a cyclone, a tiny cyclone at that, with a cold damage for EE, it's going to be exactly what we're talking about here. Convocation is to have more control of our zombies and specters. We want to keep them alive, and the slight regen that it gives is a minor boon, obviously. And speaking of zombies and specters, need to talk about those guys. We'll take a look at the specters first. Ideally, we'll be running 3 of them at end game, but just 2 of them are going to be for most of the game. Carnage Chieftain for the Mass Frenzy, Host Chieftain for the Mass Power, and if we could swing a Defiler, if we get that additional curse, that would be the elemental weakness for even better bossing. If we don't have that at all yet, just snag another Carnage Chieftain, because frenzy charges are very, very important for the skeleton's DPS. You get sorry, I should probably tell you where you get them. The Carnage Chieftains come from Act 2, the town that's just east or north, or the right exit from the Act 2 town, and then pretty much the same for Act 7 for the Host Chieftain. And finally, the raised zombie links. These guys help us meet the nearby summon minion requirement at nearly all times, and they also help us clean up and get people off of us with taunt, as well as helping us grant feeding frenzy to the crew, so they're very, very important for us. I've got them linked with Summon Phantasm, Meat Shield, and Feeding Frenzy. You could put like on a Shaper Helm with minion damage if you really felt like it, but seems to be probably not too terribly important to do something like that. And definitely convocating a full stack of zombies and phantasms into a proximity bubble will likely be enough to delete that threat, so it's just kind of one of those super helpful things, especially with Meat Shield. The closer that we are to the enemy, and we're calling them on top of us, then they just get more damage from that, as well as take less damage from everything else. So, other than that, we have like 1 socket left. I think I'm keeping track of this. And in that final socket of this somewhat socket-starved build, it's your choice. There are a few options. One very important one is a very important one. I almost said a word there. Is a skill for getting us up and down ledges and through bars. Flame Dash, obviously the most obvious, but you could use Dash as well. The other options that you would have would be Flame Wall or Sigil of Power for their added damage to your skeletons. I used one of each in those clips from the intro, Sigil being harder to use with the mana, but it's up to you. You could throw in a Vol skill like Haste or Grace, or if you don't want to use Bone Barrier from the Ascendancy, you'd have to slot in your Guard skill here. Or, like I said with EE earlier, you could use the cold skills that you get that, like Wintertide Brand, or I guess I don't exactly know what, Frost Bomb, perhaps? That would be pretty slow, so maybe not that one. But Wintertide Brand is probably a solid choice for proccing EE. But that's it for the skills. So we'll go ahead and go over to items, which there aren't any required pieces that I haven't stated. The jewel is the only thing that's necessary, and you need to use a melee weapon to be able to use Cyclone. You need to be able to use a shield to use Shield Charge, or you could just dash or Flame Dash at all times. That'd be fine as well. I chose a Claw specifically because it gives life on hit, and then I used Advancing Fortress because it gives flat life and block chance, just to kind of help my survivability even more. Again, is not required whatsoever. That Cluster Jewel mentioned earlier, I definitely need to mention that it has to be eye level 68 or higher to roll Blessed Rebirth, as a note on that. And some closing thoughts. If you're going to play this build, it's going to be for the novelty. Its prowess as a starter is only as good as your ability to obtain the gem, so keep that in mind. In the meantime, I'll reference a physical skeleton build for you to play if you don't know what you'd want to level with. It wouldn't require respecking your character, like at all, but you'd obviously want totally different auras, and those / that will be listed in a separate PoB, and it will have better single target, pretty amazing single target, and pretty awful clear in comparison to this, unless you start going into melee splash and stuff like that. But again, we'll save that for just that PoB you can reference if you don't know what to level with and cannot get that gem. But anyway, I hope you learned a little bit from hearing me talk about it. It's exciting build. I'm going to go ahead and put some gameplay here at the end of this, just to kind of give you a broader picture of what it looks like to go through a map. I'm excited that it's going to be a powerhouse, but I'm probably a bit too afraid that it won't get that jewel, won't find it early enough to keep my hype going for a league start for me personally. But that's just me. So go ahead and leave any questions that you have in the comments below. And as always, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Be safe, guys.